This is my first time here in your beautiful province. Thank you. I came here from the distant land of Winnipeg to bring you a very simple message. Number one, rental energy efficiency policy is so hard to get right. We'll talk about why. I'll draw from a report we are working on right now, should be out in the next couple of months, about how you can use a mix of policies, a policy mix approach to untangling the knot that so many people talked about earlier today about the split incentive problems and this and that. I'll show you how energy justice principles can serve as a guide for designing these policies. And I will conclude with some foundational tenant bill of rights for an energy efficient future. Exciting, eh? Right on. Okay. I get really into it, which is, yeah.
You've got this great voice for it.
Just okay, I don't even need this maybe.
Well, no, do it.
I do it, okay. So the reason why rental energy efficiency policy is so hard to get right is because oftentimes it's phrased as there's two competing orthogonal 90-degree goals. On one hand, we want all buildings to be net zero, energy efficient, comfortable, blah, blah, blah. On the other hand, we also want people to have a right to housing. And these policy goals are often treated as orthogonal. So if you took one policy, right, if you took, let's say, building performance standards, by 2050, every building should be net zero. And you turn the dial on that policy, every year we want buildings to be more and more efficient. Yes, you'll have efficient buildings, but the consequences of that, the costs of that, will be borne by tenants. They can experience renovictions. Renovictions are evictions under the guise of renovations. So the costs of doing these upgrades may be passed on to tenants, and that's not an outcome that we like. So what some countries are doing, countries that have strong building performance policies, as a knee-jerk reaction to this, is European Union, for example, they carve out, they say, okay, if you're a low-income housing provider, maybe you don't have to comply with the stringent regulations. So what happens then? You end up in that quadrant there, where you have shallow retrofits and you have low-performing buildings in the rental housing stock. So how do we get to the desirable top right quadrant without mucking it up? That's the challenge of our lifetimes, right? 2050 net zero, every building net zero, huge challenge. Everyone has a right to housing, huge challenge. Now you put these two together, that's the challenge you're confronted with. So what we did in our report is we, like Maya did with hers, we took a look at what are the kind of like rental energy efficiency policies. Turns out there's actually not a lot of them. In every country, every jurisdiction we look, very few rental housing specific policies exist. So what we decided to do was to open up the solution space a little bit, look at all efficient building policies. So all the policies that apply to making buildings more efficient, building labeling, building performance standards, everything, but don't really talk so much about renters and tenants, so there's a big circle of policies there. There's also another whole circle of policies about protecting tenants, rent controls, eviction prevention, eviction diversion. So those are all set of policies, don't really have much to do about energy efficiency, but they broadly exist to protect tenants. Now, the policy mix approach would be, this is like, it's like going to a Subway, right? And you're ordering a sandwich. You can point at, I want this, and I want that, and I want that, and you can put that together. So you can actually take a combination of building efficiency policies, tenant protection policies, and combine them to make rental energy efficiency policies. I will illustrate with some examples, but you could use energy justice principles as the kind of guiding light, like your lodestar, to help putting these policies together. Like I worked in the Subway before we call ourselves like Subway artists, right? Yeah. And so as a Subway artist, like one of the worst things someone ever ordered was someone wanted tuna and egg. Like that's disgusting. Like I don't care who you are. I don't care what your diet is, that's disgusting. So let's set some no-nos, like foundational principles for putting these pieces together. So, procedural justice. Procedural justice is when people with lived experience of energy poverty or diverse experiences, their voices, their priorities are included in the design of programs. So you could take, for example, incentive programs that you give to homeowners and landlords, combine that with tenant policies that exist by having a right to legal aid, having a right to organize, having a right to counsel. Put them together, and you end up with a rental energy efficiency policy called Tenant Liaison. So BC Housing did a pilot program. Pembina actually published a report on it about how hiring a tenant liaison, someone who can represent the tenants at the table when the retrofit programs are designed, actually not just helps secure tenant rights, but also actually helps you get to deeper retrofits because tenants know where the problems are and stuff like that. An example of distributive justice. So distributive justice is who is left out of programs and who needs to be included and who needs to be targeted. Renters, 33%, not just in BC, but 1 in 3 Canadian households are now renters. And renters are also like 60%, 2/3 of low-income households are renters. And renters are left out not just of programs in BC, but everywhere in Canada. Renters are traditionally left out of existing programs. So you can take programs that homeowners are eligible for, make private landlords eligible for those programs, combine that with rent controls or rent costs, and then you end up with an affordability covenant, which is, Better Buildings Ottawa, if you're looking for a municipal example, recently came out with an upgrade to their loan program that says if you're a private landlord, you're now eligible to apply for a low-cost, low-interest loan to improve your rental property, but the minute you increase the rent, we'll pull back the loan. So that's a covenant, right? So we're giving you money to upgrade your property so tenants can have a more comfortable home, but you are not allowed to increase the rents. And then restorative justice, we talk about building performance standards. You take policies about, we expect buildings to do certain things like not catch on fire. No one's shocked with that, right? So it should be reasonable to expect buildings to perform to certain energy efficiency standards. You combine that with like indoor temperature standards. Every province in Canada has in the winters, your house can't be under a certain temperature. So have that for the summer too. You combine those two as well. Now you have right to be cool, which is right to air conditioning and so on. So when I sent my slides, what was it, a couple of days ago, there was no examples of this, but actually recent update from the province of Ontario recently came out with some legislation clarifying that tenants have the right to install an air conditioner, but they have to, they have to negotiate like a kind of how much do you pay with the landlord kind of thing, but they've clarified that you have now, at least in Ontario, a right to be cool. So here is a database of policies that we put together. There's about 200 different building policies, rental policies. Combine them together, you have rental energy efficiency policies. So you can access this through the QR code there, and you can also be a policy sandwich artist. And before we get, before we start putting eggs and tuna together, I will, here are some like guiding kind of foundational principles. The challenge that we have, and there's folks from FortisBC here, folks from BC Hydro here, and they're all consummate professionals. They care about their work, and they're really good at doing what they're asked to do. And what utility low-income programs are asked to do is reduce kilowatt hours and maybe reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Yes, sir. Can I finish this, and then I'll go back to that in the end? Yeah. What we're not asking them to do, what low-income energy efficiency programs should be doing is they're a tool to deliver some fundamental rights that every renter should have. It's not just about kilowatt hours, not just about greenhouse gas emissions, but fundamental rights that every tenant should have. One, right to information about how your house is doing. Utility bills are your single largest controllable expense in your home, and it's a shame, a travesty that before you rent a home, you have no idea how much you will pay on a utility bill. Right to informed consent, so you know when your landlord is doing upgrades, what those upgrades will cover, and whether or not you consent to them. The right to maintain residence and tenure, so that when a landlord needs to make comprehensive renovations to your home, you have the right to come back to that unit. And I know BC has made some progress on having the first right of refusal to return to your unit, but you also have the right to not be disturbed while renovations are happening. A landlord has to take the effort to make alternative living arrangements to you while renovations are going on. Right to organize collectively and to work with the landlords and to have your priorities be reflected in project plans, and then right to well-being at home. Your home is your last refuge. With everything that's going on in the world, your home has to be your refuge, right? Your sanctuary. And it's a shame that 98%, we saw the statistic earlier, people who passed away with the heat deaths died in their homes. So your home must keep you comfortable. It must ensure your physical and mental well-being. And these are like fundamental rights. So it's not landlords versus tenants, right? It's not just split incentive, but these are fundamental human Canadian rights. I just got my Canadian passport 2 months ago, so I can say this. Fundamental Canadian rights that I think it's our broader social responsibility as Canadians to uphold. And if we align our policies and programs and systems to deliver these fundamental rights, I think that's how we get past split incentive problems and stuff that everyone's talking about. So this is who I am. And this is how you can get in touch with me. And this is a goal I think we all share, is not just about improving energy efficiency of homes, but making sure that people have a place they belong to, a place to call home that's affordable and meets their needs. So thank you.